So the topic that I have picked up is quantum cascade laser, an introduction. This is not really an expert talk. As I mentioned, it is more like a tutorial talk. All right, as indicated by Dr. Reggie, my areas of research interest are fiber integrated optics, fiber and integrated optics, optoelectronics, nonlinear optical frequency conversion, and currently I am working on these three areas. There are PhD students working on this area: liquid crystal waveguides, light scattering from turbid media, and optically pumped semiconductor optical amplifiers and lasers. But today I have chosen a topic which I am still learning, and what I am planning to do is to share what I have learned in this. So what is a quantum cascade laser? In this talk, I will address this question: what is a quantum cascade laser? Okay, so first, why quantum cascade lasers? What is shown is a range of spectral coverage which the lasers cover, typically from about 200 nanometer to 30,000 nanometer here. That's about 30 micrometer I've shown. And these at the lower end, at the ultraviolet end, we have krypton fluoride. Are you able to see my pointer arrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So xenon fluoride. Then we have the familiar helium neon laser at 633, the ruby laser, the first laser at 694. And then we have argon ion laser in this range here. And laser diodes cover a wide range, of course, with different materials, right from blue to near infrared. And there are widely used Nd:YAG lasers here, the erbium doped silica laser, erbium doped YAG laser, the CO2 laser, one of the earliest lasers at 10.6 micrometer. But nevertheless, in this area that's of mid-infrared to terahertz region, we have very few sources or hardly any sources. Of course, one of the alternatives which is being pursued is optical parametric oscillators. The nonlinear optical parametric oscillators can cover a very wide range of wavelengths. But what we are looking for is compact laser sources. And quantum cascade lasers is a widely tunable, and it can be tailored to cover various regions of wavelengths, right from mid-infrared to terahertz. So this first reported in 1994 and is continuously being pursued and continuously being improved, including just last month's Nature Photonics. You will see an article on quantum cascade laser, femtosecond quantum cascade lasers. So it's a very hot and important topic, which is seeing continuous improvements. So let me recall the semiconductor laser, which all of us are very familiar. Let me use the pen. Hope you can see this. Yeah. So a semiconductor laser is a double heterostructure with the cleaved facets. So what is shown here is a typical semiconductor laser, which has a thin active layer, which is sandwiched between two higher band gap materials, p-doped and n-doped. And there is a metal contact at the top here. So it's a double heterostructure because the band gap of the clad layers is larger than the band gap of the active layer. So this forms a double heterostructure. And what I have shown here, the longitudinal cross section, because in the rest of the talks we will discuss about the longitudinal cross section. This is the complete device, the 3D device. Typical dimensions are given: 200 to 300 micron width here, typically 300 micrometer length, and this height is approximately 100 micrometer. And what is shown as the longitudinal cross section is a section. If you take a cross section along this plane, so this is the plane. So if you take a cross section here, then you get a longitudinal section of this, and that will look like this. So the longitudinal section here has the electrode, top electrode, bottom electrode, the active layer here, which is sandwiched between two clad layers in its simplest form. There are many more layers which are used for various technological reasons, but in its simplest form, the active layer is sandwiched between two higher band gap cladding layer, and the metal electrodes provide for current injection. So this is the longitudinal cross section of a typical semiconductor laser. Now, what is a quantum cascade laser? First, I will make some statements, and let us see by the end of the talk, you are able to understand all the statements which I have made here. So it's a semiconductor heterostructure laser. I'm not writing double heterostructure because there are many heterojunctions. And therefore, it's a semiconductor heterostructure laser wherein the active region comprises of appropriately designed quantum wells and superlattices. So this quantum word has come because of the quantum wells and superlattices. So here is the active region, the normal semiconductor laser, but now the active region here comprises of large number of quantum wells which form superlattices. We will discuss each one of them. There is no p-n junction and no electron-hole recombination. In a normal laser, we know that it's the electron-hole recombination which gives rise to photon emission corresponding to the band gap energy. Here, only electron transitions and resonant tunneling in quantum wells and superlattices. I will explain again what is this electron transition and resonant tunneling. Third point is, a single electron can undergo cascade of transitions through a series of superlattices to generate multiple photons. A single electron can generate multiple photons through a cascade of transitions. That's why the name cascade. So what is illustrated here, this we will explain in detail. There is an injector, so carrier injection here through a mini band. This is called the injector band here. And then this is the mini bands in the active area. You may not still be following, but I will explain what are these. And then electron transition between two mini bands give rise to photon emission. After the electron makes a downward transition here, it tunnels to the next band here. And the same electron makes a downward transition again. Then it tunnels to the next, and the same electron goes on. So one period, you can see that in one period, there is an injector region, and then there is an active region. Similarly, an injector active. So this is one period. One period is this from here to here. And you have typically 50 to 60 periods in one quantum cascade laser. So you can imagine an electron making multiple transitions and generating photons. And that's why it is called a quantum cascade laser. So we will illustrate and discuss this in more detail. So again, recall the double heterostructure laser. I already showed you a longitudinal section of the double heterostructure laser. That's what is shown here. Active layer being sandwiched between two higher band gap medium. And there are other layers typically for ohmic contact and so on. There are many layers. And typical length is about 300 micrometers. Now, what is shown is this is the depth direction. This is the surface, x equal to 0, surface. And this is the depth direction, x. And if you go along x, then what you see is the band gap variation. What is shown here is x versus Eg. X is the depth direction. So you have a higher Eg material. So this is the higher Eg material, which is this one, the outer layer here, cladding layer. Higher Eg material and lower Eg material. Again, higher Eg material. So you have a lower Eg material, such as gallium arsenide. You can see here number gallium arsenide has a band gap of about 1.42 eV. The higher Eg material could be an aluminum gallium arsenide, which has 1.78 eV for this composition. The composition can be varied to vary the band gap. Typical refractive indices are shown here, 3.6 and 3.5. Therefore, you have a low band gap material sandwiched between two high band gap material as you go in this direction. Now, if you see on this side, the corresponding refractive index profile is shown here. The low band gap material has a higher refractive index, and the high band gap material has a low refractive index. And therefore, this forms an optical waveguide. So what you have is an optical waveguide, high index medium sandwiched between low index medium. And therefore, there is an optical mode which propagates in this optical waveguide. So we have an optical waveguide and an energy band diagram. Now, let's discuss more in detail, but just to indicate some numbers, at lambda is equal to 800 nanometer. If you take D, this thickness is generally about 0.1 to 0.2 micrometer. D, the thickness is 0.1. Then you get V, the normalized frequency for the waveguide, as 0.66, which means it supports a single transverse mode waveguide. So that's why I showed you here, there is a single optical mode which is propagating back and forth and getting reflected at the interfaces. Let's see this now more carefully. Now I have rotated the energy band diagram, the same energy band diagram which is here. Now I have rotated it 90 degrees just to feel familiar. So here is 1.78 eV, aluminum gallium arsenide and gallium arsenide and aluminum gallium arsenide. The EG difference is typically the band edge discontinuities. So this is the conduction band, this is the conduction band edge, and this is the valence band edge. So the band edge discontinuities are typically in the ratio of 35% to 65%. And that's why this height is about 0.24 EV and this is about 0.12 EV in this particular example. But what is important is to see that the band edge here, the band edge energy forms a potential well. So this is the potential well that we are looking at. And formation of a potential well in a double heterostructure. So this is the double heterostructure now rotated through 90 degrees just to make it familiar or normal way that we draw a potential well in quantum mechanics is shown here. So this is the potential well that we are talking. Formation of a potential well and barrier in the energy band diagram. So this is the energy band diagram of a double heterostructure. This is man-made, and this was called man-made potential wells. There's a very nice first paper which came on man-made potential well by Bastard in Phys Review when I was just a student. So this is man-made potential well. When we study in quantum mechanics, a particle in a potential well, the first problem that we start is a rectangular box like this. But that is really an approximation at that time to the potential variation around an atom. But today here in this, it is exactly the potential varies like a box in a double heterostructure. And that's why it's called man-made potential well. All right, so let's discuss a little bit more about the potential well. So what is shown here, the numbers, you may find it a bit difficult to read, but these are actually computer results, real results. It is not qualitative. So what is plotted here is the potential height from 0.4. Actually, I have taken VO, that is the potential barrier height, as 0.4 EV, 0.4 electron volt. And this width, which is shown here, is 100 nanometer. This is a potential well, and the dotted lines that you see are energy eigenvalues calculated by solution of the Schrodinger equation. You know that for a square well like this, the solution is tan kappa d is equal to gamma by kappa. If you solve this solution, you get the energy eigenvalues. What is shown here is a large number of solutions when D is 100 nanometer. 100 nanometer is 0.1 micrometer. Now, if you reduce D, so what we are doing is reducing D to 20 nanometer. So you can see that the number of allowed solutions reduces. You reduce it further to 4 nanometer, and this permits only 2 solutions, one here and one here. This is for a potential of depth 0.4 EV. And if you reduce it further, if you make it 3 nanometer, this will support only 1 solution. So what happens is, as you reduce the dimension of the potential well, it goes from a bulk where you have a large number of allowed energy levels to quantized discrete energy levels. And then we call it as a quantum well. It was a potential well for larger Ds. It has now gone over to quantum well because there are quantum size effects now come into play. So what is written here is the statement that is for D less than or of the order of lambda, that is de Broglie wavelength of electrons in the medium, potential well goes over to a quantum well. All right. So here, again, some simple calculations made by my students here. So solving the Schrodinger equation for a potential well. As you can see, when the well width is small, it supports only one mode. The eigenvalue, these are real calculations. So the eigenvalue you can see 0.17826 eV. So the height is 0.4 eV. So there is only one solution possible, and the eigenwave function is also plotted here. Then if you take a wider well, then you can see that it supports three modes here, three solutions. The values are given again, 0.036, 0.142, and 0.303. So these are the corresponding wave functions which are shown here. And if you take a further wider one, you can see the numbers on this axis. This is only about 3 nanometer, and this is about 10 nanometer, and so on. If you increase this, then you get more and more solutions. The point in showing this is that if you plot well width versus eigenenergy, then you can see that the eigenenergy reduces for any given. So as you increase the width, this will go down, and new solutions will start coming up from the top. So that's what is shown here. Well width versus eigenenergy. This is elementary quantum mechanics. I'm sure all of you would have done this. But this is important, that changing the well width changes the eigenenergy values. This is important and used in the design of quantum cascade lasers. That's why I'm just recalling this. All right. What is a quantum well laser? A quantum well laser is a semiconductor laser where the active region, so this active layer, forms a quantum well. Not a potential well, but a quantum well. Every quantum well is a potential well, but every potential well need not be a quantum well. So a quantum well is a laser which has a quantum well as the active region. And emission takes place by recombination of electrons and holes. So energy level here in the quantum well, the electrons are here, they recombine with the hole, and energy is given equivalent to the effective band gap. You see the effective band gap is now this energy minus this energy in a quantum well. In a bulk, it would have been this energy, that is the band edge EC. So this is the value of EC, and this is EB. So you would have got EC minus EB, photon of energy approximately equal to EG. But here you get photons of energy higher because the effective band gap, there is no solution at EC. There is no solution at EV in a quantum well. The first solution is here. And therefore you have a higher energy photon emission. Most of the lasers, quantum well lasers, are multiple quantum well lasers. So what is a multiple quantum well? When there are non-interacting, identical, non-interacting multiple quantum wells are used in the active region. You can see the active region here now. This has multiple quantum wells. Why do we use multiple quantum wells? Just to enhance the effect due to one quantum well. You want the properties of the quantum well, but because the size of the quantum well is very small, the material, the volume of the material which is generating photons is very small. Therefore, the power output is very small. And therefore, if you want to enhance the power output, then you use multiple quantum wells so that the properties of quantum wells is maintained, but you get now more power because there is more volume which is generating. Volume here also it is generating, here also it is generating. So more volume. And that's why what is written here, you can see power output is increased by having multiple non-interacting quantum wells. That's why we use MQW lasers in general. Typically 3 to 4 quantum wells at least is used. It is very rare to use a single quantum well laser because the power output is very low. Now I introduce what is a superlattice for the beginners, of course. Those who know, you know it. So superlattice are nothing but interacting multiple quantum wells. When you have quantum wells which are interacting, which means when the barrier width, so width of this is the barrier, this is the well, this is the barrier. When the width of the barrier reduces, then the eigenwave function, which is here, interacts with the eigenwave of this. You just have a look at the previous one. Here, the eigenwaves are not, because this has gone to 0. This is also gone to 0. So the overlap itself is 0. But if the barrier width, this width reduces, then the wave functions overlap and interaction takes place. And this leads to, even though individually the wells support one mode, if there are 4 wells, you will get 4 solutions. So what is shown are the 4 solutions. The actual numbers here, you can see the numbers are slightly different energy, 4 slightly different energy eigenvalues and corresponding field distributions. We can see both the symmetric and antisymmetric field distributions here, and leads to the formation of energy mini bands. This is an important concept in quantum cascade lasers. When you use superlattices, one discrete level becomes multiple levels, and therefore this looks like a mini band. We are calling it as a mini, it is called as a mini band because energy band refers to the conduction band and valence band, but this is a band, a mini band within the conduction band. Within the conduction band, we have a potential energy variation, which leads to a mini band. Mini band because electrons can take different energy eigenvalues within such a structure. So what is shown in the diagram is formation. These are actual calculations. You can see it's still 0.4 and these are the widths identical. So a mini band with 4 interacting quantum wells. Well width is 3 nanometer and barrier width is 5 nanometer. Superlattice 2, I have taken now here 8 quantum wells. These calculations are generated by my students. So for example, 8 wells give you 8 levels here, but now because the width is slightly larger, please see the well width is 5 nanometer. In the previous example, well width is 3 nanometer. It was supporting just one solution, but now it is supporting 2 solutions. One here, the E1, and this is the first higher order solution. And the interaction of the wave functions for this is much larger, and therefore you can see the mini band very clearly for the second case. Here also, actually there are 4 solutions, but they are almost degenerate. And therefore, you see now within a conduction band potential well, there are 2 discrete solutions for a single well. But when you make a interacting multiple quantum well structure called superlattice, then you have mini bands in superlattices. So formation of a mini band with 8 interacting quantum wells. So this formation of a mini band is fundamental concept in quantum cascade lasers. All right, so now let me explain the schematic operation of a QCL. So a QCL comprises of a passive injector layer. It comprises of, actually this is a superlattice with many quantum wells. I will show you later. And this is the active layer, which usually comprises of 3 to 4 quantum wells. But we have simply shown it as a region, injector region, active region. So the injector, here is the incident, that is the current is injected from here, where the electrons resonantly tunnel, because the energy eigenvalues are the same, electrons resonantly tunnel into the active region. From there, they make a transition to the next level, emitting photon, corresponding to the energy difference between this. The electron then tunnels to the next injector level and next active region, and this is the cascaded process. We will again see in more detail as I go further. Now the question is how to obtain such mini bands at different levels to realize the cascade. We can get one mini band, fine. Here, if you see, there is a mini band and we can get transition from here to here. Mini band transition is possible from here to here. But how do I get cascade? That's the question. And the answer is by applying an electric field. All right. Now let me explain again. I indicate that this is for the beginners. Effect of electric field on the energy band diagram. If you have a semiconductor with conduction band, valence band, a piece of semiconductor, not even a PN junction, simply a piece of semiconductor, if you apply a potential difference, then the band diagram tilts like this, because the end where you have applied positive potential here, the potential energy is lowered and therefore it tilts towards lower values. And what you have is a band diagram with a tilt like this. Now, the effect of electric field on quantum, that is a bulk piece of semiconductor. Now, what is shown here is effect of electric field on a quantum well. This is well known and well studied, and that is the quantum confined Stark effect. This slide completely explains quantum confined Stark effect. What is quantum confined Stark effect? Is the redshift of the absorption edge in semiconductor quantum well structures. So that is what is illustrated here. This is energy versus the absorption coefficient. Typical numbers are shown for semiconductors. And there are two curves here. You can see E equal to 0, that is the applied electric field equal to 0. In a quantum well, the absorption edge looks like this. So these details will not go here. Actually, this goes next step. There is another step and so on. So I will not go into those details, but just the definition is here. The absorption edge shifts to lower energy in the presence of an applied electric field. Lower energy means higher wavelength, or shifting towards red, higher wavelength. That's the definition, red shift of the absorption edge of a semiconductor quantum well structure. Now, if you look at the quantum well structure, what happens? This is the quantum well structure. The whole wave function, the electron wave function, which are shown here. So this is the energy E1, and this is for the whole. And if you apply an electric field, the band tilts like this. That's what you see, the tilted band, because of the application of an electric field. What happens is, because of a variation in the potential in this form, there is a slight lowering of the energy here and a slight upward energy here. That's because you have more potential here, and the potential is much lower here compared to the potential which is here. Therefore, the electron also shifts to this end. That's more attractive potential for the electron on this end, because you have applied plus to this end. Please see, you have applied plus to this end. Therefore, it is tilted like this. And that's the same thing, but now this is potential well. Whereas the whole wave function shifts to the other side. And you can see originally they were symmetric. The peaks were located at the same place. Now the peaks are shifted to the opposite direction. These details are not relevant for us. What is important is to see that the effective band gap has now changed because of the applied electric field. Because of the applied electric field, the energy eigenvalues have changed. In the case of electrons, it is lowered. This is important. And therefore, in the quantum confined Stark effect, the change in corresponding wavelength is given by 1.24 divided by delta E, where delta E is Eg effective 1 minus Eg effective 2. This is quantum confined Stark effect. The point to be taken from here is just that applied electric field lowers the energy eigenvalue of electrons in the conduction band. Let's look at this, some calculations here, again done by one of my BTech students. So what you see is the potential well. So these are all solved in COMSOL. You can see the trademark of COMSOL here appearing in the results. So this is the finite potential well without any applied field. This is the potential well with an applied electric field here. You can see that there is a slight tilt here and a little bit shift of wave function towards this. The there is a small change in the energy eigenvalues. So 1782, here it is 1776. But if you apply a stronger electric field, as in the case of this, you can see that the potential, so now the potential variation is like this. So here, this one, and here. So this is the stronger variation. Now what happens is the wave function very much is different, and wave function has leakage. It is oscillating here because the energy eigenvalue is such that there are oscillatory solutions away from the well as well. And now there is leakage which is taking place. If you see the corresponding energy eigenvalue, so these are calculated for 100 kilovolt per centimeter and 400 kilovolt per centimeter. Kilovolt per centimeter is nothing big because the dimensions are micrometer here. So you need to apply only few volts to get kilovolts per centimeter electric field. And what is important is note that the energy eigenvalue is complex. Not only the real part has changed, but there is complex part here, which indicates to the leakage loss. You can show that this complex part gives you the leakage loss. So just to verify the calculations, about 33 years back, Professor Ghatak, Professor Tyagarajan, and we worked on this problem, and I had generated these curves here. The wave function with 100 kilovolt and 400 kilovolt using matrix method. And my student using COMSOL has generated the same curve. This is on the other side because he applied the electric field in the reverse direction. But you can see the wave functions are identical. This is very important because I wanted him to test what is the way to go. I told him, you compare it with our calculations done 33 years back. This is IEEE JQE in 1988. But you can see the match is very well. In fact, if you see the crossovers here, field crossovers, it's identical to the crossovers which are there. I also asked him to calculate for a double well. This again, I calculated that time, and the student has calculated using COMSOL, and you see the wave functions are identical. That ensures that our calculations are correct. All right. Now, very quickly recall the mini bands in superlattice. Now we have to come to the quantum cascade laser. So we know how mini bands are formed and how bands can be formed at different levels by applying an electric field. So this is without electric field, nice bands are formed. But the moment you apply an electric field, the bands disintegrate because the energy eigenvalues change because of the applied electric field. So the bands immediately disintegrate. Now this question is very important because how to design a quantum cascade laser with the mini bands formed in the presence of an electric field, because you have to apply an electric field to inject carriers. And the moment you apply and inject electric field, the bands disintegrate unless you design it appropriately. So that is the design issue which is involved. Now, let me show you here another with 4 potential wells here, which supports 2 solutions, and there is a mini band. And if you apply the electric field, they disintegrate as before. So this is with an electric field of 1 into 10 to the power of 6 volts per meter. And tailoring the width to regain the mini bands. How to regain the mini bands? So you can see this goes over to this when we tailor the width. These are identical potential wells, identical width. But you see here, this width is different from this width. This is more, and so on. By tailoring the width of the wells, you can again get the mini band formation. So the tailoring of the width is very important in the case of quantum cascade lasers. It is shown here. These are real calculations done with the one well at 4.4 nanometer, another 4.7, 5.3, and 5.6 to regain the mini bands. All right. Now I come to the quantum cascade laser. Hope you would be able to understand this mini band now. There is an injector region comprising of several quantum wells forming a superlattice. which forms a mini band. Mini band comprises of large number of allowed energy levels. The number of levels is almost equal to the number of wells which are here. So typically here about 15 to 20 wells in one injector. And the active region generally comprises of 3 to 4 potential wells, quantum wells. And then again an injector region. Because of the applied electric field, they are tilted. But you see the mini band is here. The electron, if you inject here, that is by connecting it to the battery, then electrons are injected into this by resonant tunneling. Why resonant tunneling? Because this energy level is at the same level as that of the mini band. So electrons tunnel here. And from here, they make a transition to the lower level. And from there, very quickly, usually phonon transitions are involved. So phonon transitions immediately depopulate them. And then again, from here, it goes to the next mini band and so on. Typically, 50 to 60, this is one period. One injector plus one active region is one period. Typically, 50 to 60 such periods are used in one quantum cascade laser. So it consists of an upper lasing level, a lower lasing level, and a depopulation level. That is what is shown. This is the equivalent diagram. The equivalent diagram is there is a mini band, injector band. From there, electrons tunnel into the upper band, upper level here. There are 2 or 3 levels shown because actually it comprises of 2 to 3 quantum wells. That's why it is shown. And from there, the electron makes a transition. This is radiative transition, giving out photons. And from when they accumulate here, if the wells are tailored appropriately so that this energy difference between 2 and 1 corresponds to the phonon energies in the semiconductor, then phonon transitions will depopulate the level 2 and it goes to level 1. Because for lasing, we always know that in simple terms, there has to be population inversion. That is, you in a bulk laser, you know that the number of atoms in the upper level have to be more than the number of atoms in the lower level. Therefore, what we do is we try to depopulate the lower level. It's the same thing here. Electrons which come here make transition and give out photons. And we quickly depopulate by using phonon transition. Phonon transition to be effective, this difference, energy difference must correspond to the phonon energies in the semiconductor. If the phonon energies are typically 0.02 to 0.1 EV, 1 EV in the case of semiconductors. And therefore, then again it goes to the next band. So this is 1 unit, which shows the basic principle of operation of a quantum cascade laser. So you can see details, for example, Professor Frederic Capasso's article here in Physics Today, 2002. The resonant tunneling and optical phonon resonance, which I already discussed, aligning the energy levels of 2 separated quantum wells greatly increases the probability of tunneling. So that is why it's called resonant tunneling. And optical phonon resonance, this is a major mechanism of depopulation. Depopulation happens by the scattering of carriers to the lower energy level. This can be facilitated by providing another energy level below, which has the same energy as the difference corresponding to optical phonons in the semiconductor. All right, so this is the first paper, first design of from Professor Capasso's group. So Fiest and co-workers present, this is the article which came in Science in 1994, which uses 3 potential wells for the active region, 1, 2, 3 here, which form 3 different energy levels. They are tailored. You can see that the width of the wells are all different everywhere. The widths are tailored to form mini bands. So let me discuss this detail, a little bit more detail here. This is our calculations for the design of Fiest et al. My student has calculated corresponding to this paper of Science. So you can see the energy eigenvalues calculated. Each one of them has an imaginary part. That is why you can see the corresponding wave functions also have oscillatory solutions outside. So you have a 3-level system because of the band, and this is the upper laser level and the lower laser level and depopulation, the 3rd level. So this is their design. The details are written here. For want of shortage of time, let me skip this, but I have already explained the mechanism. There are various design issues, how to tailor the width of the well, and the height of the well can also be. In all these calculations, what was shown is tailoring the width of the well, but we can also tailor the height of the well. So we have also done some calculations to tailor this. I will show you in a minute. So see this, the interaction is given by, the strength of interaction is given by the oscillator strength. Oscillator strength in quantum mechanics gives the probability of transition from one level to another level. It depends on the overlap integral here. So the overlap integral has to be maximized. So this is of identical heights, what is shown here, the same previous calculation. These are all our calculations corresponding to Feist design. So upper level, the 2nd level, and the ground level. But if you tailor, if you change the height of one of these, for example, what is shown here is changing the height of one of the barrier layers here. For different heights, you see the wave function, how it changes. So the wave function is continuously tailored so that the oscillator strength becomes maximum. This is another parameter that we have. Not only width, but also height of the potential wells can also be tailored to maximize the potential, the oscillator strength, because the gain in the medium is proportional to the oscillator strength. This is true in any interaction, nonlinear interactions. For example, phase matching is one requirement, but a strong overlap of the interacting fields is the other requirement to enhance the interaction. There are further calculations of ours. So this is for the injector well width. Typical well widths are of the order of 1 nanometer. Please see this, it's of the order of 1 nanometer. If you change the width of the well, the energy eigenvalues can change of the mini band. Similarly, if you change the width of the active layer, energy eigenvalues will change. So why am I showing this graph? Because we want, at one point, this must intersect with this, so that the energy eigenvalue must be same for resonant tunneling. So that's what is shown here in this diagram. All right, I very quickly come to another example, a different example of a recent paper, a relatively recent paper here. And you can see the structure here. So this is the layered structure is here. The active medium comprising of the superlattices are here. And these are the cladding layers. It's a ridge waveguide because there are two dips you can see here, etched away to form a raised ridge. It's a ridge structure. The refractive index values of the core cladding all are given here. You can see that almost all of them are also complex because there are finite absorption coefficients in this medium. And here is the refractive index profile in the depth direction. Refractive index profile is shown here. So this is the high index region, which comprises of this active region of about 50 periods. 50, so you see this 61.11 nanometer into ns. This ns is the number of periods, typically 30 to 60 is the number of periods. So if you multiply by this, so this will become a few microns, that's all. So this is the core region which supports the mode. I'll show you the calculation. This is the same discussion, so let me skip this. But let me show you the COMSOL calculations for each of the individual wells. One well, which is only 1.89 nanometer, supports one solution. The other three wells support two solutions each. And when you combine them, the solutions are here. These are the energy eigenvalues. So this is corresponding to level 2. They are all separated now because we have not applied electric field. If you apply electric field, this will merge into one, degenerate into one band. This corresponds to level 1. So energy E1, and this corresponds to level 2. These are the calculations in COMSOL. I'm just showing it so that any interested students can immediately apply. Now, what is shown is the waveguide mode. This is the waveguide. The wave is propagating into this. It is into the screen. So depending for 30 periods, this shows the confinement. The confinement is not very good. But for 50 periods, you can see that the mode confinement is very good. The propagation is into the screen. Please see the length direction is like this. So it is into the screen. So this is the cross section. In the cross section shows mode confinement. In fact, in the paper that we have referred to, they have used 50 periods. They have also calculated for 30, 50, 70, and they find that 50 periods is the best, and the same thing we also find. So it involves, the QCL involves two aspects. One, the design and tailoring of the quantum wells and superlattices, and the second one is formation of the waveguide. Now, let me very quickly discuss about the problems and outlook. Design of superlattice structure for higher efficiency. So what are the problems? As I said, it's a very active area. That's why what are the problems being tackled? Design of the superlattice structure for higher efficiency. I have talked about efficiency in terms of the oscillator strength, where you can tailor the width and the height of the potential barriers to come up with a very strong oscillator strength. The far IR wavelengths greater than 13 micrometer correspond to energies which are very small, which correspond to optical phonon region, and therefore a large number of transitions also lead to non-radiative transitions, dropping down the efficiencies. So how to overcome this? This is the problem being looked at it. A low temperature operation is one of the solutions. Operating temperatures is low to reduce upward transitions, because the phonons can also give you upward transitions. And finally, the output waveguide. There's a lot of work being pursued on the waveguide design for optimization to increase the output power. Today, it started originally with a few microwatts of output at mid-IR. Now, today, there are quantum cascade lasers available with the watts of CW power, with all these design continuous optimization and improvisation. All right, that brings me to the summary of this tutorial talk. Let us see the same statements I have made. I hope we can now understand this. QCL is a semiconductor heterostructure laser wherein the active region comprises of appropriately designed superlattices. This is the same statement which I had written in the initially before I started the discussion. It operates fundamentally on a different principle. There's the concept compared to all other semiconductor sources such as laser diodes and LEDs, because everywhere in these it is electron hole recombination, but here it is only electron transitions within the conduction band. There is no p-n junction, no electron hole recombination, only electron transitions and resonant tunneling in quantum wells and superlattices. A single electron can undergo a cascade of transitions through a series of superlattices to generate multiple photons. I have to acknowledge my students, Govind Nandan, BTech EP student, Sandeep, MTech. It's all, they had made these calculations, and also my PhD students, Kalpak and Nitin, for drawing some of the figures and illustrations. As you have seen in my talk, there were plenty of figures and illustrations. The students have helped me. Thank you.